Well, howdy ho there, folks. How are we doing today? Hopefully, you're all doing absolutely peachy keen, fantastic, wonderful, and things. And today, I'm going to be talking a little bit. Oh, but I have a black screen about community in Warhammer and some of the stuff I've been thinking about lately. So recently, it was pointed out to me that the person who owns a certain server I was playing a lot of Warhammer in is apparently not a great person. And at first, there's some transphobic remarks, some homophobic remarks, you know, a bunch of other stuff that I had never noticed because I had literally never looked into the general section of this particular server. I was literally always just the game. I did not care about talking to a bunch of people about weird memes or whatever. But then I never really looked into any of the other server rooms. Some of them, it seems like there are some people in there that are pretty cool, and there's some people in there, like the owner, who seem like they're kind of not necessarily people I would want to hang around. And at first I was like, man, I should just leave this server. But then, like, the longer I thought about it, the more it was like, well, you know, like, there's plenty of, like, chuds and people who say pretty, I think, bad things in the Warhammer hobby. I mean, you just look at that huge freak out over, like, women custodies, and it's like, okay. Like, look, if you freaked out because it was an unnecessary retcon, or you thought that, like, it seems like they don't care about the lore and that bugs you, I can kind of understand that, although I'm gonna be honest with you, it's a giant corporation. They do not care about the lore. Not even a little. They care about selling miniatures. Don't kid yourself into thinking that this giant corporation cares at all about this hobby, and that it's anything other than what it always was, which is a money-making scheme. Don't get me wrong, it sounds like they had fun with the money-making scheme, but ultimately that's what it is. Now, if you really want to vehemently disagree with that, I mean, I understand to a certain degree. Also, I don't remember where any of the secrets are, so I'm trying to kind of wander around a bit. But anyway, so I was kind of thinking about this, and it's like, well, you know, there's always been people in the Warhammer community who say certain things that I don't particularly like, and some of which are like things I just don't like, which is, you know, whatever, you can get past that. And then some things are things I think that are actually genuinely kind of hateful. And, you know, I've gotten into discussions with people about, like, how effective Warhammer 40k is as a satire, and whether or not in some ways it's doing a little bit too much work to try and, like, write the characters as if they're actually quite redeemable and, like, good, and it's kind of weird. Sure, but, like, ultimately what it boiled down to was that, does it matter that I'm in this server with this guy saying these things if I don't even interact with it, and the server doesn't benefit the guy in any way? And that was kind of the start, but then it went more and more into the idea of community and hobby and things like that. See, one secret discovered, large magazine. And, you know, what eventually kind of led me to is the idea that, like, well, from a spiritual perspective, we should be engaging in a community that benefits us and helps us get closer to God, or, you know, it helps us maintain proper morals and things like that. We shouldn't be engaging in communities that take away from that. And, okay, that kind of led me to, like, thinking about, like, what other communities do I engage in, and are they all good? And I think that overall my experiences on this particular server, which I guess you could probably just figure out, I'm talking about the tabletop simulator server, the Warhammer tabletop simulator server. And although I disagree with a lot of what this person says, I don't have to interact with them in any way. The server, as far as I can tell, doesn't benefit them in any way, and I honestly didn't even really know they existed. So one has to ask, well, is that affecting my spiritual path in any way? Or is that simply, I think now I'm just running in circles. Or does it, you know, simply not really matter? And am I just overthinking it? You see, there's a part of that which is, like, almost like kind of virtue signally of, like, well, you want to try and, I totally feel like there's something in this hall, but I maybe not. Maybe I'm just crazy. I think I might just be crazy. But, you know, like, there's this thing where it's like, well, I want to be able to support people like that, but it's like, well, ultimately does it matter? Does it actually make any difference if you like leave the server because people said bad things, if it ultimately doesn't affect the larger communities? Like, it's kind of, it is different when you start talking about like when you start talking about things like, for instance, there was someone I knew at my work who well, really wanted to invite me to dinner, but basically what it boiled down to was that they were, you know, very against trans people, they were very against gay rights, they were very against all this other stuff, and they would always do that thing where they say, it was for Christian reasons, it was a pastor guy, and he was always trying to say things like, well, you know, I still love them because you hate the sin, not the sinner, all that crap. Which, sure, that can be true, but you're still implying that there's something hateful about their actions, which, I mean, to be really honest, if they're not harming anyone, just starts to feel sillier and sillier as it goes on, and especially, like, the kind of folks that say that, but whatever. Right, but, like, that, when I said, no, I don't want to go to your house because of this, that felt like it was genuinely actually being, like, a supportive thing, whereas, like, just being, I feel like there's a button, maybe? What am I missing? I don't know. I'm a murder machine. I'm not good with interactions with non-murder type devices. And sometimes you just need, and so that in that case anyway, it felt like it made sense to do this. But now with the server thing, I'm kind of going, well, it's like the only place I've seen to really play Tabletop Simulator Warhammer, and at this moment that's the only way I can play. So then it turned to a thing of like, well, okay, I would still like to play, is this that big of a deal? And it got me thinking about, like, you know, communities in general. It seems like there's this whole thing going on where online communities will act like, well, I will act like they're a community in the sense that, like, okay, some people chat in a server and it's a community, man, we all know each other and stuff. It's like, to a certain extent, I'd say that's true, but I think with things like Discord, it almost becomes too easy to engage in more communities. That's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but it comes too easy to just use it as like a distraction. Just be like, I thought they were going to spawn. To just use it to, like, you know, waste time and things like that. Is there anything necessarily wrong with wasting time? Not necessarily. Oh, you took a minute to spawn in there. Not necessarily by itself, and it can really widely depend on what exactly you're doing. And if you are getting a good community interaction out of your Discord, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I do think it does become really easy to get distracted over, like, things like that. But it also got into the whole idea of, like, not engaging with a particular server because there's some negative things going on in it. You know, it can start to feel like there's a praxis going on there when in fact it doesn't matter and you're just talking in the wind. It's sort of like when people engage in, like, Twitter activism, you know, where we're like, and I'm not going to call it X activism because that's, I don't know what that is actually. That sounds like it could be something different, but maybe I'm wrong. But, you know, like, you engage in these activities, you give them importance, but the truth is that it's just like basically random crap on the internet and is completely and totally irrelevant, but we give it importance because, you know, oh well, if I'm doing it, it has to have some sort of importance. Come on. Oh no, Q is to throw. That I hit the wrong button. Oh well, that's fine. Hello? There's a crack grenade right here anyway. Ah, here we go. Hello, demons. But basically, you'll do things like this. It's like, oh yes, I made a difference. But in truth, what you've done is nothing. You're just not ignoring a part of a server. Really, in this case, for me specifically, it's just not ignoring a part of a server that you were ignoring anyway, or not having to ignore it. When, like, honestly, I didn't have to ignore it because I didn't even know it existed. So it's just kind of like, what? Oh, cool, machine spirit. Some of the secrets of this game are like right in the open, and then other ones are like actually you kind of gotta look. But what it ultimately kind of boils down to is, like, okay, so there's this notion A that being in the server somehow matters. I don't know if that's true in any way, shape, or form. I think that, in all honesty, it doesn't... Oh, there's somebody. Man, imagine carrying a heavy stepper around for that long just to be immediately blasted the second you see an enemy. No. Ow, 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 ow. Stop, you're hurting me. I'm calling out. I'm taking a break. Ow. And, you know, but that's also kind of the thing is like, look, I don't, like, just because someone disagrees with me on certain things, I'm not necessarily going to hate them. I think if their opinions are actually harmful or, like, you know, like, actually bigoted in some sense, I probably don't really want to, you know, spend a bunch of time around them. I probably don't really want to, you know, give them a bunch of my attention, but I don't know. It's like if I was at like an actual game store, you wouldn't really probably know these things about someone unless they start opening their gob and just saying heinous things, which, believe me, I've had that happen too, or like nothing, like completely unprompted, and someone will just start laying into you about like their opinions on like the gays or whatever. And I guess I don't really, I guess people just think they can tell me that because I guess I just have like that passing exterior where like no one immediately goes, oh yes, he likes the boys, which is, you know, hey man, whatever. I mean, and that's another thing, like even if I go to a religious community, like sometimes the religious communities, if they find out like certain things, are going to be weird about it, they're going to like have issues with it. Well, if you go to the certain kinds, I personally found that like Advaita Vedanta and like, you know, just dharmic groups in general don't care like at all, so which is kind of nice. But still, you know, like I like Jesus, but I don't really want to go to churches because a lot of churches, even the ones when they're nice, they preach these very kind of not very loving views, I guess is a nice way to say it, and sometimes out and out hateful views of like people who do things that they don't necessarily agree with. And, you know, they'll say things like, you know, love the sin or hate the sin, not the sin, or whatever. They'll say stuff like that, but then you'll hear them talk about people and you're like, it's very obvious they don't love the people who are the sinner. They don't really look at them as anything other than like an abomination, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, so people will do that sort of thing. They'll couch whatever they're, oh my gosh, they'll couch whatever they're saying like this loving language or this language where it's like, oh look, we want to help the people, we think that they're gonna go to hell and things like that. And it's like, you get through all this stuff and eventually what you're left with is this idea that like communities are self-enforcing, like they will enforce different doctrines on people, they will enforce different ideas on people, things that people might not even truly believe or agree with, but like if it's part of what the group believes, there'll be a tendency to simply accept or to, you know, not question too closely or to find an excuse for. It's kind of like the way people approach pretty much all kinds of different things, where like one of the things that can be actually hardest about changing your view on something is that going to cost me friendships? Is that going to cost me the ability to interact with different people? Are they going to look at me differently? Are they not going to tolerate me? And, you know, like groups will do this thing where they'll like try to enforce certain behavior on you. They'll try to make it so that you started hanging, like, you know, in certain communities where, oh, you started hanging out with gay people. Oh, well, maybe that's because you are gay, actually. But yeah, it's important to think about all this kind of stuff. Like, what kind of community do you want? What do you want to have supported in you? What do you think matters? And, you know, sometimes Like for me with this TTS thing, I was like, well, no, wait a minute. Is this even a community, or is this just like a server I go into sometimes and play Warhammer 40k? I can't actually get as many games of AOS as I'd like. I don't currently have a physical army, partially because it's expensive. I thought that I couldn't afford one, but I don't know. I'm fairly reluctant to give Games Workshop that much money, honestly, because you know, next thing you know, like next week, then it's gonna be like, oh yeah, this no longer counts. But yeah, I think we need to be cautious about the communities that we say we're a part of. I think we need to really sometimes engage with the idea that maybe, I don't know, can I just get to like, if I think if I get to 200, it won't waste that. That's what I don't want to waste this. I want to keep this here but take the armor. So I have, yeah, that's like a full 200 health there. Oh, we're in a book place now. My favorite kind of place. I love learning. But yeah, I don't know. This is all just kind of stuff I was thinking about lately. Okay. Anyway. So thank you all for stopping by, and just remember that you should choose communities that help you and benefit you and bring you closer to God, and then also bring you happiness. And you know, if you're not really the believing type, you should still be in communities that bring you happiness and make things better for you and all that fun stuff. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Well, I love you and God loves you, and bye-bye, love you, bye. Have a great one. Have a wonderful day, and I hope you feel God's blessings. Okay, bye, love you, bye.